Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every Thursday, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today has been involved in martial arts for over 50 years, trained in numerous styles, competed in events like the World Combat Championships, Battlecade, K1 Grand Prix, and more. He competed as a kickboxer, worked in security, and was even a pro football player in the USFL. He was in the movie Mortal Contact and is the author of the book Shootfighting, The Ultimate Fighting System, and is the man who coined the name Shootfighting. Please welcome to the show today, Mr. Bart Vale. How are you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing well. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you doing this for me. So what we do with all my guests, we go back to the beginning. I want to know where that first interest, that first spark about martial arts came from.
All right. I was a young kid. I watched my buddy's stepbrother kind of handle like three people like it was nothing. He was in charge of the community college, the basketball courtyard, and nobody was allowed to go in their regular shoes. And we were up there, and somebody came in with regular shoes, so we were supposed to go down and tell them. And my dad then had got an argument, and he handled a situation with three people and just him. And I said to him, I said, "What did you do?" And he says, I'm training in karate. And I said, I want to do karate. So he started to train me and his stepbrother in the garage. And then one day he said, I can't train you guys anymore because I'm going to be a soccer coach. I made fun about, nobody plays soccer. That's, whatever, play football. But anyhow, he was persistent to being a soccer coach. And He told me where to go. He said, go to Tracy Karate. And I said to him, I don't want to train with no girl. He goes, no, it's not a girl. It's these three brothers that, have a bunch of schools around. They're really good. And he says, it's that school I took you to a couple of times that we went to and so forth. So I went into the Tracy school and I started training in the early 70s. It was like 1970, 71, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I started training with Tracy Karate. My instructor was Tom Dunn.
Okay.
One of the top guys that Al Tracy sent over to California, from California.
Okay.
And I was fascinated with it. It was exactly what I was looking for. And I continued to train. I had the opportunity when Joe was training, he used to take us all over the places to look at stuff. And again, Joe was the guy that was the soccer coach, or going to be the soccer coach. I had the opportunity to see Bruce Lee at the Homestead Air Force Base when he did his 1-inch punch. And
wow.
There were a couple of other guys that came over to the Homestead Air Force Base to do demonstrations. And I was just really, really fascinated in training. It was all traditional martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
All what we all thought was traditional martial arts. You learn your forms, your techniques, your katas, your kicks. So many times you have to do it before you can progress and go on. And I was so fascinated with it. And then one time, at the very beginning, I was testing for my orange belt, and I failed. And I said, "Oh man, you know what? I'm going to quit this karate stuff. I'm good enough." Now, you got to remember now, I didn't make any rank at all. And everything in the neighborhood, everybody knew white belt, brown belt, and black belt. Nobody knew about colors. There was no such thing as colors when I was doing this. So I said, my buddy said to me, he goes, "Hey, you're supposed to be a karate tonight." I said, "Yeah, I got really good." And so, I quit, and he said, "Oh, cool." He says, "What belt did you make?" And I knew I couldn't say white because he'd laugh at me. And he knew I didn't stay long enough to be brown. Or maybe he thought it, but I said, I said orange belt. And he looked at me and he said, "What a stupid color." And I thought the same thing after he said it. So the next day I went back to the karate school, tested, got my belt, And from that on, started training on a regular basis, had the opportunity to start teaching and managing schools. And I mean, I just had a great time doing the traditional Chinese Kempo, which is basically the original style that William Chow showed Ed Parker Sr.
Yep.
And Ed Parker Sr. showed the Tracy brothers, Al Tracy, Jim Tracy, and Will Tracy.
Yep.
Then later on, everybody kind of just watered it down or changed it or modified it based on what they could remember or what they thought was efficient. I mean, I had the opportunity to train with William Chow from 82 to like 86, maybe. Oh, wow. 85, 86. Because I started going to Japan in 86 to compete in what is now known as the MMA stuff. When we were doing it, it was just considered like the strong style, which was the combination of kickboxing and grappling. And when I saw that, I kind of took a back seat to the Chinese Kempo. I had already achieved my 4th degree black belt in Chinese Kempo.
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of do a little bit more of the strong style. And I was even more fascinated by that because, again, I'm a big guy. I'm at 6'4", 250. And I had this little Japanese kid took me apart in the ring. Like I couldn't even figure out what was going on. I mean, I yelled and everything like that cheating, you're not supposed to do this, because I think it's just kickboxing. And he kind of mopped the floor with me. And I said to the Japanese, I said, I got to learn this stuff. I mean, this was fascinating to be able to combine grappling and kickboxing together. So the only thing that I saw on it, because I do a lot of bodyguard work and security work, you can't really go to the ground on the street, only because you end up getting kicked in the head by somebody that's not even part of the fight. And the other thing, too, that was always real bad was the asphalt tore you up all the time. I mean, the asphalt rips your knees and elbows. Even if you're winning, you're going to get all scraped up in that. So I didn't like the ground stuff in a street situation. A couple of my buddies were big-time wrestlers in that, and they always said to me, well, because I always say, what happens if you get in a street fight? They go, well, then I'll just become a bad boxer, because they would not go down to the ground in the street. I mean, they were bright enough to know that. So again, you gotta stay standing up. But in today's world, a lot of people just go to the ground.
Right.
So the first thing, you watch these shows and everybody's trying to do repo. I think that repo show, they're always doing a rear naked choke where they take the guy down to the ground and they do that. So as a martial artist, for so many years in the Chinese Kempo, not trying to train people to grapple, because nobody's going to learn how to grapple in a few months. So what I started doing was taking the Chinese Kempo and adding a variation to one of our stand-up techniques if the opponent is able to take us to the ground.
Okay.
And if he does, our main objective is to be able to get back on our feet and then be able to do a self-defense technique, whether it's hitting them in the throat or hitting them in the eyes or groin or whatever it is.
Okay.
Fascinating. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to back up a little to the when you were still training in Chinese Kempo. When you were doing the Tracy Kempo, did you do competition through Kempo at all? Did you do tournaments and stuff?
I did. I did. I went to a few tournaments. I used to love to go to the internationals. We did some local tournaments, and then back in the late 70s, early 80s, we put together a team, the Miami Vice karate team, and in fact, our team beat the Budweiser team.
Cool.
In the I think it was in the Bluegrass Nationals.
Okay.
And like the only problem I had with the point fighting was what they saw or what they thought they saw.
Right.
And that always bothered me. And after a while, we just started calling it a game of tag because you could be jumping away from the guy, stick your hand out there as you're jumping the opposite way from where he was, and you could get a point. And it just wasn't real good for me, but it was definitely a stepping stone. I love to go out to the internationals. I was out there in the internationals where Mr. Parker promoted me to 4th degree black belt in Kempo. And, we were up on the stage and he puts me up on the stage and he gets me in a horse stance and he's wearing shoes. And I know in Kempo, black belt and above, we get kicked in the stomach.
Yep.
he's wearing a pair of shoes. He's talking, and I'm standing there in a horse stance. And what I'm thinking in my head is this is going to hurt because Ed Parker Sr. was a total badass. Mm-hmm. And when he hit you, you knew you got hit. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going, this isn't going to be good. But, I'm all excited and pumped in front of everybody at the tournament getting promoted to fourth black. And he stepped back to kick me. He took his foot out of the shoe as he kicked me.
Really?
Put his foot back in the shoe without even looking.
Wow. That's cool.
I was blown away that he could do that. And he could and it wasn't like he looked down to see his foot or where the shoe was or anything. I mean, it's like he knew exactly where it was. And then the other thing I'm thinking, I'm going, he probably didn't even know. He probably didn't even think about the shoe. And that was just a freak thing because the came out, kicked me, and went right back down. His foot was in the shoe.
That's
and he
cool.
moved around, walking away and everything like that.
That'd have been cool to see. Wow.
It was incredible. My one buddy was there to watch, and he said he never saw anything in his life. I mean, he was training in Goju, mm-hmm. and he always heard about the Kempo people being punched below black belt and kicked above black belt. And when he heard that I was getting promoted to fourth, he wanted to see that because he never witnessed anything like that. Mm-hmm. And he was just fascinated by, of course, everybody was fascinated by Mr. Parker's ability.
Right.
To be able to put the stuff together that William Chow showed him.
That's really cool. What a story. Cool.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Nice. And you also mentioned that when you were doing that, you started teaching. So what drew you to teaching? What made you want to teach?
Well, after I got back in and got my orange belt in that, Tom Dunn had recommended me to one day at the class there to teach. And I said, well, God, I'm not really sure, how to do that. And so we had like a little instructor's room. Mm-hmm. And we went into the instructor's room. And that instructor's room used to be for just private classes. But as time went on, we very rarely used that because, we were always teaching all the private classes in the actual dojo itself. So that little room became the instructor's room where you would change your clothes or whatever. I got in there and then he says, the hardest thing is, and all this stuff, but the hardest thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to mirror the student because you got to do everything opposite that he does.
Right.
And what fascinated me about teaching is it opened up another door to my martial arts training because at one point I could see where the techniques and the movements and everything I did was two-dimensional. But when I started teaching, it was more three-dimensional to me than anything else then. And, for a while there, I always had to kind of stand next to the student to make sure what side the left and right was. Mm-hmm. And as time went on, looking at the student moving his right hand was basically his left hand. And it was just the opposite side to me, which, that's what fascinated me, first of all, for my ability, for me to be able to focus on that, because that helped me as a martial artist understand the movement in more than two dimensions. And that's what I was fascinated by. And then the biggest thing that I really liked was to be able to take somebody from like a AB level to like a CD level to where I can actually see their progression. And especially in something that I love, being the martial arts. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just fascinating to see how this student is able to throw a movement or be able to demonstrate a movement on an opponent. And most of it stuff was done in the air, but to see him do something on an opponent and then be able to get him to be able to control it and set the timing and be able to set the range, it just fascinated me to be able to do that for the student. And that's when I realized that I really enjoyed teaching the martial arts. Okay. I really did. The only thing that happened is when I started teaching the shoot fighting, it kind of opened up a whole different level.
Right.
Because on the Kempo, we could get away most of the time doing the stuff in the air and movement. But in the shoot fighting, day one, you've got to have somebody there. And the problem that we have and everybody does it, and they don't even realize it, is when somebody grabs you or reaches for you or pulls you, your natural reaction is pull away. And that's what, because I train some of the police departments in that, and I try to explain to these guys that they're not resistant, okay? Because when you grab their arm, the natural reaction for us to do is to pull away from it. That's a natural reaction. And we can't help that. That's like a sneeze. You can't just do that. So I try to explain that when you grab the guy's wrist and you move the arm towards you, their natural reaction is to pull it away. That's natural. And so what I'm getting at is on the grappling, when you grab a hold of somebody and you go underneath their arm and that, their reaction is pull away. So when you start to work out with somebody in the grappling world, you're always working against them. Nobody in the grappling world works with you. So, you get a 10 times harder workout because it's all physical as soon as you do grappling. Because there's no katas in grappling where you can stand and do it in the air and everything like that. I mean, it's getting a hold of somebody and them changing your movement because they don't feel they want to do that. And that's the thing that I noticed on the shoot fighting was the fact that we got a great workout in the shoot fighting when you actually have to spar with somebody.
Nice. So now you got into the full contact fighting. At that time, had you started calling it shoot fighting yet, or did that come a little bit later? When did the name come about?
What happened is Soranaka came to me and says, we're going to try to bring some matches to the United States. We want to bring a team of Japanese to the United States and compete.
Okay.
Now, again, me being in Miami at the time, we are going to do it in Miami because I'm going to be the one in charge to make sure we get the place and all that. The only problem over in Japan, it was realistically for the fans called UWF style.
Okay.
So it was realistically wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to Soranaka, I said, we can't come over here and say wrestling because people are going to think like American style wrestling, and we're nothing like that. I mean, we're in a different category than like the American wrestling. And so we got to come up with a different name. So we were at the office and there was Soranaka, the owner of the company, which I don't know his name, Shin or something like that or whatever. And then, of course, Fujiwara and myself. And so we're just kind of coming up with some names to bring it to America. You just can't say wrestling and, nobody's going to show up. So Fujiwara wanted to call it kick, suplex, submission style. And I said no, because, and he loved that name. But I said, you can't say, my friends aren't going to say, hey, let's go to the kick, suplex, submission fights tonight. Because the name is goofy.
Right.
So I'm sitting in the office there, and I've been in Japan for a couple of months, and I see no English at all. You got to understand this. There's no English. I've been there a couple of months, and I'm in the office, and I see a video case, and on the video case it said shoot, SHOOT. First thing in my mind was shooting a gun. So maybe it was going to be a video of people hunting ducks or whatever it was. And I wanted to see English. I wanted to hear English. I wanted all this English crap today. So I said, if I could take the video back to my apartment and watch, I wanted to see it, shoot guns and that. And Fujiwara, Soranaka said, it's not guns and that, it's wrestling. I go, wrestling? Shoot is a gun. He says, no, a wrestler in the old days was called a shooter. And I thought, wow, what a shoot. And I said to Soranaka, I said, what about shoot boxing? And he goes, no, we don't wear gloves. So I said shoot fighting. Soranaka and Shin loved the name. Fujiwara was still convinced kick, suplex, submission style was the name. But we didn't go with that. So we went with the shoot fighting there. And then Soranaka kind of talked me into registering the name.
Okay. And
so we did. And then we brought it here to the state.
I think you picked the right name for sure.
Yeah, it was a great name. And then the other thing that pissed off the Japanese was I did a commercial on cable. And it was like a 30-second commercial. And, the guy, the announcer, this and that. And then at the end of it says, come watch the Americans beat the Japanese again. Soranaka says, that's not very funny. I said, hey, I didn't start the war. You guys did.
So how did that event go then that you had in the U.S.? the first one?
The event went really good for the first time. Anybody's seen it, that we did it at the James L. Knight Center, which is downtown Miami. And I think we had about 3,500 people.
Wow.
That showed up for it.
Not bad.
And it was really good. And then we tried to do a few matches after that. The biggest problem that I saw we were going to have is being able to rent a place and be able to be, because I try to get sponsors and stuff like that.
Right.
To sponsor, because I know Budweiser used to love to sponsor stuff. And I went into Budweiser, and I had a meeting with the top Budweiser people, which I could be wrong, but I think I was in the Chicago area meeting with them. And I came in with a proposal of $400,000, and which I thought was a whole lot of money, and it still is a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I didn't hear anything from them. So one of my students knows somebody that worked there, and he called, and the guy said that particular Budweiser, they don't do anything for under $4 million.
Wow.
And I'm thinking in my head, if I would have came in there with $4 million, they might have done it. Yep. But they said they wanted to stick to boxing, and I said, there's no audience in boxing. You look at Monday Night Boxing, there's nobody in there. He said, yeah, but we don't care about that. We just care about the advertisement and that's going to be on TV. That's our main thing is TV. And see, over in Japan, it was opposite. They didn't have TV coverage. They want the fans. They want the fans to come there and watch, because stuff like that never went on TV. You just can't watch TV and turn on over in Japan and turn on, wrestling or kickboxing or anything like that. I mean, the only thing I ever saw on TV in Japan was sumo. Other than that, and then baseball started. But for the most part, they wanted the fans. So every time I try to do something over here in the States, Soranaka was, oh no, we got to get the fans. And I was more thinking about getting the sponsorship that would want to get on TV to get the advertise, to advertise their, like Budweiser.
Right.
I mean, Budweiser, when they're up there on Monday Night Boxing, every commercial has Budweiser. Go get a Bud, do what. It was all Budweiser. And we just didn't, I couldn't get past that with Soranaka, trying to get like a real sponsor. I did have Napa do a small sponsorship on our second one.
Nice.
To where we put a commercial and you could go buy your tickets at Napa. And then at the end of the event, I put on the back of the ticket, go back into Napa, your local Napa store, and get a free oil filter when you buy 5 quarts of oil or whatever it was, something on that. And they liked it. And again, it was the same thing. I mean, everybody wanted boxing. It just, the world wasn't ready for this yet.
Right.
They just, it wasn't that time yet.
So what, now I've heard other people talk about shoot wrestling. Is that just another name for it, or is that completely different?
Yeah, basically the same thing. I think on the shoot wrestling, they have the same rules as we do. Shoot boxing, the rules are a little bit different because they wear gloves. They're allowed one takedown, and they're like 15 seconds on the ground. But basically, I think it's the same exact thing that we're doing, but just using, because even Siam did Shuto, which is almost the exact same thing.
Yep.
But they do, I think somewhere along there is, the time, maybe you don't have as much time on the ground, or maybe you don't have as many times to escape to the rope. I mean, I don't really know exactly, but I'm almost real sure that shoot fighting and shoot wrestling are exactly the same, but just different name. Because again, like I said, shoot fighting is a registered trademark.
Right.
And, kind of like what Gracie Jiu-Jitsu did. And that's why Gracie did exactly what they should have done by registering their name.
Yep.
The only problem is everybody just flipped around and started calling them BJJ.
Yep, exactly.
That's the way we do things here in America. We have very little honor. So
if someone came up to you and they knew nothing about martial arts at all, and you had to explain to them in a couple sentences, what is shoot fighting? What's your answer for that?
Well, the easiest way that I say that is a combination of Thai kickboxing and submission grappling.
Nice.
Well, it's just like MMA, almost just like MMA.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference between shoot fighting and MMA, which nobody knows what MMA is yet, is they don't have the transition. Okay, on Monday night, they have a kickboxer or a boxer come in there and teach them stand-up. And Tuesday, they got a wrestler come in there and teach wrestling. They don't know the transitions from stand-up to ground or ground to stand-up.
Okay.
So there's like a whole section that they miss when they put that together. And again, MMA wasn't really a style. UFC isn't a style. Some of these people are confused on what's going on. Mixed martial arts was basically called after NHB stopped.
Yep.
And basically, they were telling me it was because of my fight with Mike Matonio, where I headbutted him. He got 55 stitches in his face. They were grabbing my feet on the ropes, on the cage. We were sticking our fingers in the eyes. We were pulling hair. So after the fight, they came out and they started going over, because we were going to do another fight, and they came up with all these rules. Well, you can't headbutt, okay? Because that was my favorite thing. Can't headbutt. Can't pull hair. Can't stick the eyes. So somebody came out and said, well, how are you going to do NHB and have rules? NHB says no holds bar, which means nothing. Okay. In fact, I wore a steel cup because I thought you were allowed to knee and kick to the groin and everything like that. But at the fighters meeting, they said, no, you can't do that.
Okay.
But afterwards, they said, this is what you can't do. And somebody says, well, how are you going to call it NHB, no holds bar, if we got rules? Well, it's not no holds bar. It's mixed martial arts. And that's basically how the name got going. And that's why they were calling it MMA.
Okay. So
then it went from there.
When you first saw the UFC, what were your first initial thoughts?
I thought it was awesome. Basically exactly, they were like a couple of years behind what we were already doing in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I noticed was they were taking two different styles to compete against each other.
Right.
It's kind of like somebody that's great playing baseball, playing against somebody doing football, and then trying to modify the rules.
Yep.
What happened over in Japan, and that's why Japan was ahead of us, is they developed a different type of fighter. They didn't go out there and say, okay, well, we're going to get a judo guy. Now, everybody knows judo and jiu-jitsu, they can't stand up fight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not, their first thing is down to the ground. And a kickboxer and a boxer can't grapple. So the UFC just had an arena where two different styles can compete and see which one's the better. And sometimes, like when I was going to fight in the WCC, I went there and the floor was like a wrestling mat. And for a kicker, that's the same thing I heard about the UFC mat. It was for a wrestler. I can't pivot on a wrestling mat without breaking my ankle.
Yep.
So right there, having the wrong floor, you eliminate the stand-up altogether. Even a boxer can't throw a good cross when he's standing on a sponge floor. Because as a boxer, you got to pivot off the back foot and you draw your back heel through your right shoulder. And that's what's going to knock the guy out or break a 4x4.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you gotta have that pivot point. But when you pivot, which you can't on a floor like that, but if you were able to lift up and turn, you're still taking your weight off there. So realistically, the UFC mat started to gear more towards the grappler. And when we did the WCC, I had them change the floor because I wasn't going to do my art on a floor that was like, I might as well fight on a waterbed.
That makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
But that's what's happening is that, they don't have the transitions from stand up to ground and ground to stand up.
Right.
They're missing that piece.
So were you more a fan of the old school UFC or the newer stuff?
I kind of like the newer stuff a little bit better now.
Okay.
Than the old stuff because, it seems to be at one point it seemed that more stand-up fighters were involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing more stand-up. I don't know if the mat's still designed for a grappler, but I know at the very beginning it was more like what you would do in a judo mat.
Yeah.
So it geared it towards the grappler. And again, I tell everybody it's a sport. I train the police department, stuff like that. And we use a lot of the techniques that we do in shoot fighting, like the heel hook and the ankle lock to take the suspect out of the police car when they're kicking the doors. So there's a lot of stuff that we could use in the street. But the one thing I always say on a regular basis to these guys is avoid going to the street with them taking you down. because then everything's lost.
Right.
I mean, now the police love to take the guy down to the ground so they can cuff him. I understand that. So, I work a whole direction there for you to take him down rather than him taking you down.
Nice.
And this way you can control him and then cuff him and get him up. And, sometimes, you're cuffing him for his own safety because he's a goofball.
There you go. Nice.
That's what I say all the time. We're gonna cuff you for your safety.
So what led you to write your book?
Well, I had somebody come up to me about wanting to know, because I did a lot of training tapes on the shoot fighting, but they wanted more like a hard copy kind of a thing. And again, at the time, I thought it was a great idea because, again, in my world as a martial artist, I have a lot of martial arts books. Master Yami, What is Karate? This is Karate. Mm-hmm. I had those books, and I remember still to today that I would take out the book and look at one of the pictures and go, oh, that's kind of cool. I remember that. And so they approached me about writing a book. I don't think it was Paladin Press, but I think it was somebody that knew somebody from Paladin Press.
Okay.
And they were saying how they're usually the people that write books that are unusual, different, something you won't find at Barnes & Noble.
Mm-hmm. Very
so
cool.
I said, you know what, let's put together a book and go from it. And somebody contacted me not too long ago about writing another one. And again, to me, it's, now that the era is, computers and video and streaming, a book kind of seems outdated.
I think it depends. I still love reading books, so I think it kind of depends on the person.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there's a less of a group of people out there that would do a book.
Definitely.
Because somebody said to me, why don't we put on Kindle or whatever it is?
Yep. Kindle or Nook or yep.
Right. And I said, well, that might be an idea too. But, the world is changing. Mm-hmm. Everything is new technology and computers and all that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like, and in fact, I went not too long ago to look for a black belt magazine, and I couldn't even go and find a black belt magazine in the store that I would normally get a magazine from.
Only place I find it now is Barnes & Noble. I think is the only place I can even find that magazine now.
Yeah, see, that's the problem with it, because there was a place down in Fort Lauderdale that I used to go to, and I said, hey, what happens to all the karate magazines? He says, oh, we haven't had karate magazines in there in years.
Wow.
I think I was the only one buying them.
I used to buy them I had a gas station half a mile from my house. That's where I used to buy all my martial arts magazines, and they quit selling those in like 95, I think.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. The guy I want to say Al's newsstand or something like that. He says, I'm the only one that ever bought the karate magazine. So, when I didn't go in there for the last couple of years, because he only got like 3 or 4 magazines at a time.
Yep.
And he said, he didn't really have an interest for it, which is like any other business. Yeah.
Supply and demand. People have to want it, unfortunately. Otherwise, they're not going to do it anymore. So
yeah.
Okay. So now, do you guys still do shoot fighting events and tournaments and stuff?
Yeah, we do. We haven't done any since the COVID.
I suppose. Yeah.
The problem is it's real hard to get people to come back into the school, especially, teaching the Chinese Kempo is still very easy because we always taught it one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And we never we had group classes, but for the most part, our students learned their material because the Chinese Kempo is a difficult style, and like some of our forms, and I'll give you an example, is Tiger and Crane, which is basically, a 12-minute kata. Wow. And it's hard to teach that in a group class. Mm-hmm. And if somebody doesn't show up one day for the class and we're going on, it's hard to get it like that. And again, it's an advanced form, so you can't have a group class just for one person. But for the most part, they learn their material in the private class. And then the group classes were designed to work with a partner on some of our techniques, workout, conditioning, and so forth. And when the COVID happened, we stopped all group classes. And most of the private classes with some of the students, well, how can we still come in and just take the class? So I had to modify the schedule. So there was only 1 or 2 people in the dojo at a time. Wow. And then, I tried to do the Zoom and everything like that, but that was, for me,
that's tough.
Very difficult. I couldn't do the Zoom stuff like that. I could be like a squirrel where I have no I get lost real quick. I can't focus on what they're doing when I'm watching a person on a TV.
That makes sense. I mean, it's tough.
So,
I mean, training martial arts through Zoom is not easy.
what I did though with my students is I make them do one private class in the dojo, and then I tell them what I want them to work on, and they have to videotape it and email it to me.
Okay.
And then I say, listen, if you don't get the email in to where I can review what you did, the next class you come in, we're just going to review. So what I'm actually doing is forcing them to practice, because everybody says when they leave class, I say, okay, make sure you go home and practice.
Oh, I will.
Then the next time for their class, did you practice? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
But they did.
Yep.
You know, I can tell, it's like you can't chew gum and walk. So I make them do that. And then if they don't send it in to me, I go, you didn't send your thing. And I was going to do it. I said, yeah, I was going to do it too, but you didn't. So let's review.
That's good.
So then this way it's forcing them to do what I would call homework. And I said, the more you do, the better you're going to get. That's what you got to understand. I mean, Bruce Lee said one thing that I never forgot. He says, don't fear a guy that can do 1,000 kicks. Fear a guy that can do one kick 1,000 times.
Yep.
And that's what makes a good martial artist is repetition. I mean, William Chow told me we only have 54 moves in our system that are different. 54.
Mm-hmm.
But we do those 54 movements 5,000 times. So when you're doing that step and block, you could do it on 15 different techniques. It's still a step and block, step and block, step and block. So what you're doing is you're getting the repetition that makes the muscle memory. So this way you step and block, step and block, step and block. It's second nature. And that's what fascinates me by the Chinese Kempo is because we have a lot of movement.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. But it's just like, being a chiropractor or being a neurosurgeon. I mean, the chiropractor has less training than a neurosurgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And the neurosurgeon has hours and hours and hours of practicing. And that's what makes you good is that muscle memory. And, of course, for a neurosurgeon, you don't want to do it with your eyes closed. But
right.
You'll be able to, and that's exactly what the martial arts is to be able to do it with your eyes closed. And that only comes by repetition. And a lot of times the student gets bored by step, block, step, block, step, block. But if we take that step, block, step, block, step, block, and each time we do it, modify it to add or take something away, they're still doing the base movement, but it seems like they're doing something different. It's like Mr. Parker used to say to us all the time. My father used to give us meat and potatoes, meat and potatoes, meat and potatoes. One day he gave us potato and meat, and everybody laughed. And the point was exactly what he said. It's still meat and potato, meat and potato, meat and potato, but it was structured in a different order,
yep.
which makes you better as a martial artist. I get mad at these people that are getting rid of all these movements because their students can't do it, because all they're doing is making their system weaker. It's not making it better. I mean, people ask me, how long will it take an average person to get black belt in Chinese Kempo? I said an average person can't get black belt in Chinese Kempo. I mean, you got to be above average. Yep. And if you're not starting off above average, we're going to try to develop you to be above average. I mean, I don't think anybody comes into a martial arts studio being above average. I mean, I've had a lot of people come in that are great athletes, but there's always going to be something that they're going to do in the Chinese Kempo that's going to be difficult, no matter how good they are. And so you need that repetition. That's what's going to make you better.
Right.
And you see, I used to make fun, everyone made fun of the Karate Kid, because again, he waxing his car and painting his house. But all that he was doing was developing that student's movement.
Yep. Muscle
whatever painting the house or waxing the car, that movement is repetition. And after a while, you just do that with your eyes closed. You just wax down, wax off, paint up, paint down. I mean, that's all he was doing as he was getting his house painted.
Exactly.
So, which was a great idea. So
free child labor.
Next week I'll have my students paint the building.
There you go. Nice. So what advice would you give someone who has never done martial arts in their life and they want to get involved and they're just trying to get some ideas on what should they look for in a school? What should they look for in an instructor, and maybe some things they should avoid?
Okay. Well, I think the most important thing in any martial arts style you're going to do is see if it's what is compatible for you. Mm-hmm. Now, what we do, we give the student 2 weeks to try with us.
Nice.
One, it gives us a chance to see what he can and can't do. And it gives him a chance to see if it's what he wants. Yeah, I got some people come in and go, oh, I want to lose weight. Okay, so they're obviously, they want a school that gives more cardio.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to rip his eyes out and pull his groin out. And some people want more self-defense because they got bullied or beat up or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so they don't want to sit there and run 16 miles under 40 minutes. So they want more self-defense, hitting and so forth. But I think the most important thing is to find out if the school is compatible. Now, some schools will give you an actual free class to let you try it and see if you like it and what you have on that. And then, of course, always make sure that when you talk to the instructor that what he's teaching you is going to be what you're looking for.
Right.
And I have a lot of people, and I've been teaching. I got my own school in 75, and I started teaching people and realizing that most of the people don't know what they want. They've seen it on TV and they want to do it. So they walk into the school, and it'll give me a chance to work with them, because I still do my 2-week program, mm-hmm. to work with them to see what they can and can't do. And it gives them an idea of what's going to be expected of them afterwards. And the other thing I tell people, watching somebody else doing it may give you a general idea. You know, if you go in and you watch the group class and they're doing a lot of running and cardio, you know that school is going to do more cardio than self-defense, or they may have more self-defense, and that's what you're looking for. But as a student just walking into a school, I don't think there's any bad school that don't waste your time with that style or this style. Mm-hmm. I think the first and most important thing is to kind of get in there first to see what you want, and then be able to talk to the instructor and try to get more of this or less than that. And the reason because I've been doing it for a long time, and I can tailor a program around each individual person.
Nice.
I had a girl come train with me. Her instructor threw her out of the school because she kept doing her inward block wrong.
Really?
And he kept telling her, you're doing it wrong. So she came into my intro program. The first day was her and her 2 sisters. The first day, I realized that her arm was messed up. I said to her, your arm, stop fighting me. She goes, I'm not fighting you. I said, I'm turning your arm. Stop fighting me. She goes, I'm not fighting you. I said, there's something wrong with your arm. This girl was 22 years old. She went to the doctor. They did an x-ray on her arm. Her arm at birth was fused together.
Oh, wow.
She could never do that movement, ever. And you know what? She never knew she couldn't do it. And then on first day, I knew her arm, something was wrong with it. And she was 22 years old.
Wow.
And so I said, okay, now what we have to do is we have to develop that. And it's like anything else. How do you teach somebody a right punch if they got no right arm? Mm-hmm. That's the same thing. I mean, we had to develop her to do that. She did a great outward block. She couldn't do a real good inward block, but, she had to work with what she had. And that's the problem, is because when you're training with somebody 1-to-1, it's going to be you and the instructor. And when you do a group class, I tell people this all the time, I can only go as fast as the slowest person in a group class. Mm-hmm. So if you're the slow person, it's going to be good for you. You're going to get aggravated because you think you're holding up the class, and you're going to quit. If you're the fast student, you're going to get aggravated by the slow person. And so, again, in my group classes, I got to kind of put it to where everybody gets a workout. Everybody can go through some movement. But in the private class is where you're going to get that one-on-one, and I'm going to develop you to your ability and not to somebody else's ability. Nobody can learn how to play piano in a group.
Right.
Nobody goes to group class to learn how to play piano. So that's the other thing to think about. I mean, a lot of places do the group classes, and some of them do private classes when the student gets higher in rank. Mm-hmm. And again, like I say to students all the time, I mean, do your research. If you were going to go have open heart surgery, you're just not going to pick the first person you see in the yellow pages. Let's see, Dr. Who what? Yeah, I'm going to have him take my heart out. You research it. Same thing with a martial arts school. Research that. Go in there and talk to the instructor. See what he's going to do for you.
Nice. I love that. That's a great answer. All right. Who are some names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
You should ask me that 30 years ago. I don't know. I mean,
you've trained with some great people. You've met some great people. I mean, it's,
I really have. I mean, I was fortunate, because I went to these people. I seeked them out. I mean, I was fortunate to train with Al Tracy, Ed Parker, William Chow. I trained with Sornaka and Fujiwara. I met Bruce Lee, never had an opportunity to train with him. I don't know. I was 12 years old. When I met him, I was bigger than him, and I was 12. Joe Louis. I mean, out of everybody, Joe Louis was serious. And I mean, Joe Louis, the kickboxer, was a serious badass.
Yeah.
He used to come to our school in Miami all the time. Him and Tom Dunn were like great friends.
Nice.
And he would come in there, and I have an old reel-to-reel video machine. They look like a tape recorder machine, but they're video.
Yep.
And again, I have all these tapes on there, and I have Joe Louis in there in the dojo at 8th Street doing a side kick.
Wow.
And I hear two smacks, like somebody's hitting their chest. Bam, bam. And I'm going, let's play that again. And you see Joe Louis hop across the room, and you hear bam, bam. But you only see the side kick.
Wow.
And so Tom Dunn played real slow. Joe Louis threw a back fist and then a side kick. But you never, ever saw that back fist.
That's awesome.
Incredible. And Joe Louis would come down to the school, I don't know, at least every other month, hang out and train with us and spar with us and work out. I mean, incredible. Bill Wallace, another one.
Yep.
Where you see me do my kicks and all these fancy hook kicks. And, here I am, 6'4", being able to do a roundhouse kick to somebody's head like it's nothing. That's all Wallace.
Nice.
I mean, I trained with Wallace. I started training with him in like 78. And going and doing all his stretch and all his kicks and how to close the distance and do that because, I mean, to watch Wallace and his kicks, I mean, that to me, again, incredible. And I train with a lot of people that I, really don't want to talk about because they weren't as good as they said they were.
Right.
I had an opportunity to train with Moses Powell. And we did everything with an eskrima stick. I didn't even know Moses Powell was a jiu-jitsu guy.
Oh, wow.
Because when I trained with him, we were doing all eskrima sticks.
That's cool.
So we would train with the eskrima stick and the, what do you call the hanjo or hambo.
Yep.
And fascinating. So all those I mentioned will be on my mountain.
That's a beautiful Mount Rushmore. Some great answers there. So
yeah.
Nice. All right. So in 50 years of martial arts, is there a philosophy you've learned, one philosophy that raises to the top of your list that you keep coming back to as super important to you?
To tell you the honest truth, no, not really.
Okay.
I mean, not at all. I couldn't even think of something.
Well, that's okay. Hey, not everyone has an answer for that.
Maybe our next interview, I'll give you time to think about it.
Well, there we go. All right. I got a few fun questions to wrap it up. This one, you can't obviously mention yours, but do you have a favorite martial arts book?
My favorite martial arts book. I would have to say it would be What is Karate?
Nice.
By Master Oyami. Only because I think that was the first book, and I got that book from the guy that started teaching me in his garage, and with Master Oyami. And I was fortunate enough to meet Master Oyami in Japan. He had me as a special guest at his tournament that was done in May. And again, I think that would be the one. I mean, of course, I got a lot of books. Right. I always pull out Batosi's book to kind of cross-reference it. I really wish Mr. Chow would have wrote a book, but he never did.
Definitely.
Of course, I always pull out Mr. Parker's books and go through them and cross-reference them.
Yep.
So I would have to say that one only because it was given to me as a young kid by this older guy, Joe, and it meant a lot to me for him to. Later on I found out he was just going to throw them away. But because he was done with karate, he wanted to be a soccer coach. Go figure. But anyhow, it meant a lot to me because, he gave it to me and said, here. And then I got to meet the guy that was in the book. And I think that would be the one for sure. Great answer. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show? It'd have to be Kung Fu. That seems to be about with David Carradine. 30% of my guests picked that one, I think. So. Yeah, well, because there's not a whole lot. I mean, there's not a whole lot that realistically that you could go to. And again, I'm sure Warren Brothers, they were kicking their ass when they turned down Bruce Lee for the part. Mm-hmm. Go figure, right? Yep. So it'd have to be that because, really, in my day, it was that show, and it was cool. And I try to watch all the TV shows.
Yep.
You got the Karate Kid, and now they made that new
Cobra Kai
spin-off of what's it called now? It's called
Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
it's really good.
Again, well, as I'm watching it, I want to go into those schools and just beat the crap out of those instructors.
Yeah. Obviously, it's not realistic, but it's when you have the nostalgia of the original movie, it's a good show.
Yeah. I mean, I liked season 1. I liked season 2.
Yep.
Season 3, I kind of gave up on it because it just was going too far to me in a negative direction.
Okay.
And and again, me actually being it's like I made a movie. It was called I was in a movie called Mortal
Contact. Yep.
And I'm a real martial artist.
Mm-hmm.
And the star of the show was this goofball. No, I shouldn't say that. This goofball from Europe, and he wasn't a martial artist, but he was, kind of like the good-looking guy in his country.
Yep.
But he said Black Belt Magazine came there, and he said a lot of goofy things. And I said something to him. I said, this is fine for you to make up stories and you don't know what you're talking about. I said, but this has been my whole life. I mean, don't just make up crap because you just want to sound good for the magazine.
Right.
And this is what I do for real. And then of course we had a little bit of conflict there. And then he was scared to work with me because I did get a little upset and I did hit him for real.
Nice.
And then he wanted to quit and cry. And so then later we cleared it up, and he was quite convinced that he overstepped his boundary the night before.
Okay. Nice. I'll have to. I don't know if I've ever seen that one. I'll have to go back and watch that. So I know I've heard of it. I just don't
my kids saw it and they called me up. They saw it in Spanish.
Nice. Okay.
But I pulled a Joe Louis. I pulled a Joe Louis on that one.
Yeah.
Because I was on the set with Joe Louis when they did Jaguar Lives.
Okay.
And I had a great time because I was eating, the buffet was there, and I mean it was kind of great. And so Tom Dunn was there with me, and I think there was one other guy that was with us at the time. I can't remember who, but I know it was me and Tom Dunn. And then of course the producer says to Joe, "Okay, we want you to come out this door here and do this, this, and this." And Joe goes, "No, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is come from here and do this, this, and that." And they're going, "No, we got the cameras." And they argued for like 40 minutes.
Wow.
To do this. These guys have all these cameras and that. And so I'm standing over the buffet getting something to eat and that. And the girl with the clipboard, she's standing near me. And then the producer comes walking up and goes, "Who the hell is this guy?" And she goes, "Oh, that's Joe Louis. He's an awesome karate guy." Now he goes, "I don't give a shit who he is. This is the last time I'm working with this guy." So they walked away, and I go to Tom Dunn and go, "Come on, come over here and get as much buffet food as you can because I got a feeling we're getting thrown out of here today."
That's
but
great.
Nevertheless, they did the movie. I ate like a king.
Nice.
And then that was it. Joe Louis kind of cut his own throat. But so when I did my movie, when I was doing my movie, that I kept making the same joke because there's one part in the movie where the guy comes running across and he jumps to do a flying kick, and I catch him in the air and I spin around and throw him in the pool. Nice. And they had to do this take over, and then there was a plane that flew by that we had to stop. And I said to the guy, "Why don't you put other cameras here so we can get the shot?" He goes, "Yeah, that'd be smart. You'll see the camera in the other camera." I said, "Hey, don't give me no lip. I'll throw you in the river." And but I did that because you had to go with what the producers wanted because that's the way the camera was.
Right.
But you can watch me in the movie. When I go to catch the guy, my arms are basically white. When I throw him in the water, my arms are sunburned.
Nice.
Because it took us about 4.5 hours to film it.
That's funny. I will have to watch that this weekend, so that'll be good.
Yeah, well, somebody has it in Spanish. My kids called me and said, "Yeah, we saw you in Spanish."
That's awesome. All right, how about now obviously can't pick yours, but favorite martial arts movie?
My favorite martial arts movie? Mm-hmm. It would still have to be Enter the Dragon.
Nice. Solid answer. Okay.
It would still have to be that. I'm trying to think, but yeah, I think Enter the Dragon had always been, that has always been my favorite movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the question for you,
I didn't even know Jackie Chan was in the movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was kind of weird.
Yep. He was in that. Yeah, that's crazy. So in the early 90s movie Shoot Fighter, now did they have to get permission to use that name? Were you connected to that in any way?
Nobody even said anything to me about it. I mean, they made a movie, and then somebody said they got a movie out, and I didn't even know about it until it was out. Okay. And again, Shoot Fighter is different because the name Shoot Fighting is registered.
Right. True.
And according to because I had to get like a real lawyer.
Yeah.
And if somebody is using Shoot Fighting, but it's describing an outboard motor, there's nothing I can do about it.
Okay.
But what has to happen is they got to use the word, and it has to confuse people that are doing shoot fighting with what I'm doing.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Final question. Now, this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie, but just overall, do you have a favorite movie fight scene?
I don't know. I like the fight scenes that they did in Rush Hour.
Oh yeah. Oh, Jackie Chan. Yeah, definitely.
Jackie Chan and even Chris Tucker.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if he was actually doing some of those moves or that, but
I think,
being funny and everything. But
yeah, I think he trained with Jackie. I mean, a little bit. So I think he did some of the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that they did to be able to make the movie, but some of those scenes were really incredible. But I can't think of anything. I'd have to go with Rush Hour with the moves Jackie Chan was doing, because again, some of those things were incredible. And then of course to see the bloopers at the end of it.
Those are the best parts. Yep.
Yeah. Were even great.
No, let's
go Rush Hour. That's what I'm
nice.
gonna go with.
I still remember the first time I ever saw Jackie Chan. It was Cannonball Run. Was it Cannonball Run or Cannonball Run 2? He was in one of those movies when he played the race car driver. I don't think he spoke any English in the movie at all, but yeah. It's like, that's Jackie Chan.
Yeah, he had no words in that. I think that was his first thing that he did.
Yeah, in the US. Yep. That's funny. Cool.
And then of course, in Enter the Dragon, he was just an extra.
Yep.
And then of course, some of the Chuck Norris's movies were great.
Oh yeah.
We used to go to Redondo Beach in the early days at Chuck Norris's school. Tom Dunn used to take us out to there. I don't know if they were good friends or not, but I remember going out there to train at Chuck Norris's school. Nice. And I mean, he had some pretty good scenes, fight scenes in some of his movies. I never really watched Texas Ranger.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't watch much. I played pro football and I don't even watch football.
Okay.
So I'm not. If I'm not playing, I don't want to watch somebody else. It's like I say to people all the time: nobody comes to watch me work.
There you go.
Why do you think I'm going to come watch them work?
I think one of my favorite Chuck Norris fight scenes. I love. It's more of a comedy, but I love the fight scene in the movie Sidekicks between Chuck Norris and Joe Piscopo. That final fight scene. I don't know if you saw that movie or not, but hilarious.
Yeah, you're right.
Such a good fight scene.
That was good.
I think that was I think that was one of his first comedies that he did, probably. And then after that, he did like 4 or 5 comedies in a row. I think because they're like, oh yeah, he's actually funny. But yeah, him and Joe Piscopo together was just classic. I still go back and watch that one like once a year. So cool. Well, Bart, I want to thank you this has been so much fun. Seriously. I mean, I love your stories. You had such an amazing life, amazing career. I will put links for your school and anything else you want me to put links for when the show comes out in a few weeks. And I truly appreciate your time, and I've enjoyed this so much.
Me too. Thanks for calling me.
And I will be in touch when the episode's ready. Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.